Hello, it is 3 years to the month since I last did a video looking at the price of narrowboats. During the pandemic, the prices went ballistic. Nobody could go abroad for their holidays, so they were buying narrowboats and camper vans and all that kind of thing. But several years later, has the market cooled down? Have prices come back to a reasonable level, or are they still sky high? To answer that question, I've come to the well-known broker, Rugby Boats. Not showing them any particular favouritism, I just happen to know them here. I know they'll know what they're talking about, and also my dad lives nearby, so I can pop and see him afterwards. So, what does it cost to get a good narrowboat these days? Let's find out. For this purpose, I had a browse of boats at both the lower and higher ends of the price scale, as well as one in the middle, and you'll see tours of those in the video. I also recorded a chat with the brokerage owner to get his take on what the market is doing now.
I would say prices plateaued maybe 6 months ago, and then we saw a definite turn in prices on the downhill. We spoke to other brokers, they were all finding the same, and interestingly enough, Dominic, who was the previous owner of this business, said to me, beware general elections. And for a reason I can't fathom, the last general election things went quiet, and certainly in the run-up to the one we've just had, things went quite quiet again, and the whole market slowed down. That had an effect on prices, but I think it was more of a correction than a collapse. Prices didn't collapse. I think they were getting more or less to where they had been before the insane levels that we'd seen post-COVID. So we had a quiet 3 or 4 months, and I would say 4 weeks ago things started picking up again. The phone started ringing, boats started selling, and it felt as though hopefully the hangover from the general election was starting to go away. I don't see the market collapsing. There is still a shortage of decent boats compared to demand, which is why I think the price position at the moment hasn't been a collapse, it's just been the correction that I mentioned. I think you need to be patient as well if you're looking for a boat, unless you have to have somewhere to live immediately. Be patient, you know, your boat will come along. Boats are selling all year round. People sort of seem to think nothing's going to happen if it's winter. Boats do come on the market in the winter, and they do sell in the winter. So it isn't just spring to September. Be patient, I think, is the answer there.
If someone watching this is new to boating and thinking, I would like a boat, obviously prices can go from a bucket job that needs a complete replating and is about to rust into the canal right up to shiny new. What would you say is the minimum reasonable amount someone realistically needs to spend to get a boat that they can then use straight away without having to spend a load of more money on it? Because you can easily buy a boat for 20k, but you'll have to spend another 20k sorting it or whatever. What's the minimum someone needs to spend?
It obviously depends on what your requirements are for moving on to a boat and living on the boat. But we have, for example, we have a boat currently for sale for £28,000, which you could move on, live on, and not have to do a thing.
And it's not about to rust into the canal?
Well, it's not had a survey yet, it hasn't sold yet, but no, it had a survey a year or two ago, and it was fine, no. So I think they're few and far between, that sort of price level boat that's ready for immediate occupation, but you can find them. So I would say sort of around the £30,000 mark is where you need to be looking to move on to a boat and do nothing.
At a minimum. And anything above that will be a bonus in terms of newness of the boat or condition of the boat or so on and so forth.
That's my view. People may disagree and say you could do it for 20, but I think probably £28,000-30,000 is what I would suggest.
Our first sample boat is at the lower price range, being on the market at £35,000. And a nice little boat it is too, albeit that it could do with a lick of paint, new flooring and some attention to the woodwork, but I found it oddly charming. The owner's hoping it'll be sold to someone who'll love it as much as they have. Older it may be, but it's got modern devices like solar panels to charge the batteries. A traditional stern is where we'll go aboard, and yes, I did say the woodwork will need a bit of care, but that's normal for this age of boat. Just inside are the engine controls and dials, plus the solar charge controllers. Under that deck board is the engine, which is only 10 years old. A door leads to the bedroom where the mattress folds out across the width in order to save space in what is a short boat. Storage is provided underneath. A side corridor gives access to the bathroom and toilet, the shower being a wet room sort of arrangement where the whole floor is the shower tray. The toilet is the portable camping type, and there's a sink with storage next to it. Shuffle along the corridor, and not one but two side hatches provide light as well as access in and out of the boat. There's also a large cupboard next to this one. The kitchen is compact but has all the essentials: a cooker, hob, fridge and sink, plus more cupboards. You'll have noticed the woodwork, I'm sure very typical of its time, and something that's easily freshened up with a tin of paint. Towards the bow is a decent-sized saloon, housing a dining table, comfy chair, and even a chaise longue. How very decadent! Again, a bit of sanding and painting and some new flooring, and this would be brought up to date. There's a wood burner for chilly nights, and also diesel-fired central heating to 3 radiators. Finally, the well deck is small but large enough, with a view ahead through the glazed cratchboard. A little bonus is underneath the well deck, where there's a huge storage void. Which parts of the market are doing best? Is it the high-end stuff where people who've got the kind of money don't need to worry about it, or are we seeing a lot of flow in the low end because housing is troublesome to buy and people are buying boats to live on?
Yeah, it's hard for me to give you a clear answer on that, because we do tend to specialise in the mid to high end market. So the lower end of the market I'm not that close to. I think the lower end of the market would probably still be pretty busy. People who can't afford to get on the housing market tend to turn towards the cheaper boats. We are probably finding it a bit harder at the moment to sell the really expensive boats, 6 figures, than we were a year ago. But I think still the £60,000-£70,000 price bracket is busy. They're still moving pretty quickly.
Are people now making cheekier offers, or even trying silly offers?
We run a spreadsheet here which tracks over the last 3 years. It totals up the sum of all of the asking prices of all the boats that we've sold and all of the actual selling prices of all the boats that we've sold. And we're currently running at 97%, which I'm happy with. That gives me some comfort we're getting it right. And interestingly, a lot of that 3% are driven by very expensive boats, £140,000, £150,000 that may be sold for 120. So broadly speaking, we're getting that right, and we're not seeing that level drop. So what that's telling me is the answer to the question is not at the moment. People aren't really making cheeky offers. I think if we price a boat right, it's selling for more or less the asking price. If we get it wrong, then the boats hang around and we have to adjust.
Let's have a look around a boat at the middle price band. This one's on the market for £58,000, and this is its spec. It's another trad stern, but with the novelty for a trad of a small pram hood, though this would need to come down when travelling lest it be ripped off by low bridges. Solar again adorns the roof on top of low-level storage boxes. Here are the engine controls and again solar controllers, plus a 3 kilowatt inverter for mains electricity aboard. Steps lead to the bedroom, which again has a cross-bed arrangement. In other words, you fill the space on the right with the second bit of mattress. Central heating and hot water come from a gas boiler, opposite which, in what looks like a cupboard, is the same type of top-loading washing machine I used to have on my narrowboat. The side corridor takes us to the bathroom, which has the usual sink and a built-in Thetford cassette toilet. And I call it a bathroom with good reason, albeit it's inevitably a small one. If you can't fit in that, don't worry, there's a shower above. Next up is the galley with a side hatch, so you can talk to the swans as you cook. There's also a fridge or freezer there, as well as a fridge or freezer here too, and another side hatch. Here's another look at it all from the other side. Immediately in front of the kitchen is a semi-Pullman dinette table with the living area up to the bow. That bow has a large well deck under which is the water tank. There's lockers on either side and a cratchboard and cover. Here's a final look back through before we return to the questions. At the moment, I would say it's fair to say that a lot of people in the country are feeling the pinch, and 3/4 of boats on the network are leisure boats. It's only about a quarter that people actually live aboard full time. Now, leisure boating, it's clearly an expensive pursuit, not just in the purchase of the boat, but the ongoing costs. Are you noticing any sense that with times being hard and people being careful with their money, that is either impacting sales or purchases?
I think for certain, since it's slowed down, people looking for boats have had more time to shop around and be a bit more cautious. In the frenzy, they didn't have time to shop around. We could stick a boat on the market for whatever price we thought was, achievable in a very optimistic world, and it would sell. And because it was so frenzied, people just didn't have time to compare and contrast. Now, I think people have more time. So that means we have to be a bit sharper about getting prices right. And if we get the prices wrong, too high, they are hanging around, the boats are hanging around. I think now boats are a lot more price sensitive. People are a bit more cautious about spending large sums of money. On the one hand, I've not really understood that to a degree, because if you've got 60, 70, 80,000 pounds to spend on a boat, on a leisure thing, you're not that concerned potentially about the cost of your heating your home and what have you. That might be a naive thing to say, but if you're buying a £70,000 toy, you're less likely to be worried about the cost of eating and cost of living than some people.
40% of my audience is from America, and about another 20% just overseas generally, Australia, Canada and so on. And there's often quite a lot of interest from American buyers saying, well, we'd like to buy a narrowboat so we can come over for 6 months during the summer. How feasible is it? And I have talked to overseas buyers who've done that before. Is that still a thing?
Yes, it is. We've sold a lot of boats to a lot of countries over. We've been here 8 years now, and I would guess 70, 80 boats to people from different countries. Really diverse countries as well: Sweden, South Africa, America, New Zealand. I could go on. But what people have to be really conscious of now, this has changed recently, I would suggest in the last year and a half or so, is do not assume it's a given that you can get insurance. There are, I think, 5 or 6 countries where insurance companies, for reasons I don't really understand, insurance companies will not insure you if you're... The ones I know about are America, South Africa, I believe Canada, and then it's Australia, New Zealand, or something like that. So all I would say to people from abroad, if you're buying a boat, yes, it is possible. There are ways around the insurance problem, but don't assume you can just buy your boat and get it insured
That's
easily.
just the normal insurance for the boat to cover it against fire loss, whatever.
I think there was a massive suing incident, and the insurance companies have just turned around and said, look, we're just not going to bother now. There are ways around it. If you have a UK address or a friend in the UK whose address you could use, it won't be an issue. My point is, don't take it as a given. You might need to jump through some hoops.
And you need that insurance, of course, to get your canal licence.
Without insurance, you won't get a licence.
Right.
Yeah. But it's perfectly possible, and we're still doing it for people abroad. To just consider there are some obstacles.
Are people still buying to live aboard, or is the leisure market where it's at? I mean, I know proportionally speaking, leisure market is 3/4 of all boats anyway, so you'd expect that to be bigger. But where are you seeing people? Are they coming to you saying, I want to live on a boat, or I want a weekend toy?
Most of it is either extended cruising, so the whole summer and then back to shore, or living. A lot of people seem at the moment to be selling houses to buy a boat and to live on. So it's, I would say it's probably 70% live aboard and maybe 30% continuous extended cruising in the summer.
For the final boat tour, we step up a gear and reach deeply into the wallet, as this one's up for £108,000. Here's the spec sheet. Unlike the other two, this is a semi-traditional stern, and no, those are not water stains on the woodwork. It's supposed to look like that. In fact, the wood in this boat is very unusual, as you'll see inside. Before that, here's the engine bay. It's a traditional layout with the bedroom at the back and, yes, another crossbed. The alternative would be one lying along the line of the boat. You will immediately have noticed the woodwork I just mentioned, and there's more as we go through. No MDF or chipboard to be seen here, and rather more interesting radiators than the usual white rectangles. Also unusually, there's a side hatch in the bedroom. Unlike the prior boats, this one has a walk-through bathroom, which means it takes up the width of the boat instead of being off-corridor. This door leads through with all the look and feel of a medieval castle. And there's the throne, a proper ceramic bowl with copper-piped towel rail beside. Even the sink looks vaguely historic. I rather like this little office nook that comes next. Not all boats have somewhere you can work. In the galley, a kerosene-fired range, which also serves the radiators. And, will you look at that country cottage vibe, Belfast sink and all. Lots of light comes in from a hatch overhead. You can see where the money's gone in the crafting of this. It's about as far removed from a flat-pack kitchen as you can get. An L-shaped dining area is adjacent to the galley and open plan to the saloon. The wood, I am told, is reclaimed timber that was once in Buckingham Palace. Apparently, the restoration of Windsor Castle after the fire in 1992 meant the wood from the palace became available for use, so it's now part of this boat. It's no wonder the boat feels like a castle. Here's the elegant saloon. And to finish, the bow is an open well deck. So that's what you get at the higher end of the market these days. Anecdotally, I would say I'm hearing from people that over the last 2-3 years, the state of the canal network, due to the well-publicised fiscal troubles of the CRT, the state of the network is getting worse. More overgrown, locks having more problems with their paddles and gear and stuff like that. You sell diesel and you talk to a lot of boats just passing here that aren't necessarily buying or selling. Yep. What feedback are you getting, if any, from boaters about their feelings of the state of things? And is that contributing to people saying, I've had enough, I'm selling the boat and going back to land, or things like that?
People do have their opinions on the state of the network, and quite often they're pretty negative. We did go through a phase, I would suggest 2 years ago, of selling quite a few boats purely because people were fed up with the state of canals. I'm not seeing so much of that now. People still moaning, but we're not selling many boats for that reason. People aren't deciding to sell their boat because of the state of the network. But it is a constant source of discussion, and it's usually a source of moaning.
If someone is looking to buy a boat at the moment, what tips and advice can you give for how to find a good boat at a good price? And because it's a lot of money to many people, there'll be few who can chuck away 50-60 grand without thinking about it, but the average person, it's a huge sum. So what's the advice for being reassured that you're doing the right thing?
It is. I mean, £20,000 is a lot of money, if you're at that end of the market. I think you need to register with as many brokers as you can. Most of us have an email system that will send you an email every time we list a new boat. Trawl the internet, trawl Apollo Duck, that's quite a well-known website for buying boats. You have to be prepared to get in your car and go and see boats. We were recently trying to sell a boat from Devizes, and people would ring up and say, can we come and see this boat? And I'd say, yeah, it's a 3-hour drive there, and they didn't go. Which I didn't really understand. So you have to be prepared to travel and put some time and energy into it. Have a survey. You must have a survey, really. Irrelevant of the age, I would suggest. Sometimes we sell boats and we have a survey just prior to putting it on the market. I think if it's had a really recent one, that's okay, but otherwise have a survey. And I think be pretty clear in your head as what you want.
Hey. Oh, he's a good boy. He's a good boy.